Hello and welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me on another of my interviews. Now, as you know, in my journey to explore all what's going on, I've had a number of, what should we call them, gurus who've been telling me and educating me about natural law and sovereignty, common law, and all those sort of things, and of course acts and statutes, the legalese and the bar guild and the legal system, and where we as individual people, or are we living men and women, fit into all of that. And it all sounds really good until it goes horribly wrong. Well, my guest today, Darren Purcell, has had an experience where it hasn't quite gone to plan. And I thought it was fantastic to get him on to explain, in case people are trying this themselves, just to know that there are pitfalls down the line. Darren, thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, thank you.
All the way from Wales.
Yep,
Yeah.
South Wales, yeah.
South
Sunny.
Wales.
It's not raining.
Not raining, no chemtrails.
Not today.
Not yet. We've had a day off from it. Oh, we can breathe that fresh air.
Well, that's questionable, but there's no chemtrails.
Yeah. But anyway, so yes, when sovereignty goes wrong, or the freedom on the land, free man on the land, or the common law, or the natural law, whatever people want to call it, and there are sort of different interpretations of that. You've been somebody who's explored this for a long time, and you've tried it, but things haven't quite gone how you anticipated. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah. So I would say about 15 years ago, I started dipping my toe in. I was already somewhat what people would describe as a conspiracy theorist, the fake moon landing, zeitgeist, the great global warming swindle, and so on, so on. I was a prolific watcher of these things. I was looking at the common law stuff, the freeman of the land stuff, very interesting. Myself and my partner then, Catherine, we got onto the vaccine side of it together, and that's when we really woke up. That's when we realized, we kept asking that question, why? If this is real, why? That's when we both woke up, so to speak, and realized it was something a little bit more nefarious going on with these systems. Again, we both sort of dangled our toe in the money creation and so on, so on. Catherine went her way, and she done many years deep dive into the vaccines and the medical industry. She's a medical researcher now, and a lot of your viewers might well know her. She's quite prolific on the internet. I spent some time looking at the common law. It's where I started my first real deep dive after the vaccinations, or alongside with the vaccinations. And I just want to point out that, I'm not a negative Nelly. I truly believe that this alternative system for us exists. I'm relatively fluent in the Freeman movement. I'm fully aware. And that's the thing. I've read all these things, and this is, part of my issue with speaking to you today. I've actually read a lot of these documents. Many of them take some understanding, and I couldn't put my hand on my heart and say that I truly understand all of them 100% myself, but I've got a good understanding of them. The Set KV Act, for example, 1666, the alternative will still say that it's a load of mumbo jumbo, but read it. I think there's only one or two sections that's still valid legislation today, current legislation, which it is. It's on the government website. But that basically explains, and I'm sure some of your other guests have touched on this, so unless you want me to, I'm not going to go into too much detail. But the Set KV Act 1666, we already had the plague in London, which started about 1665. 1666, they set London alight. And I say that intentionally, they set London alight. It was a false flag, without a doubt. Again, people, you can go and have a look. So in all the panic, the government pushed through, as they do. They create an issue so they can push through some legislation. they created and pushed through the Sedgwick Act 1666, 666 on the end, ironic, um, which basically, in amongst all the panic, they didn't know who was alive and who was dead. We had the plague, we had the fire. So the government declared to take everybody's assets, and it would appear everybody, into trust, into government possession, to run as a trust. Um, and you have 7 years to claim that you're alive, and then you can get your estate and your possessions, and I assume your life back. Well, I am aware of a few people who've done this. Hence, you see a lot of things where people are declaring themselves to be the living man and writing in blue ink and a thumbprint, sometimes in blood on the paper. Although the officials don't like the thumbprint in blood.
Do they not?
But for hygiene reasons. Yeah, you get a telling off from them sometimes when you do that. But ink is a good alternative, and you can buy little pads in the pound
Right.
shop with even a red ink in there. So I understand all of those concepts, and to a large degree, I believe in them. The problem is, in my experience, and it is my experience, like I say, I think I've kind of jumped ahead of myself a little bit. So getting deep into the Freeman movement, still learning today. Do you know what I mean? Everybody's learning. We came across money creation and then the mortgage fraud, for example. And both myself and Catherine, we were devastated. And the type of people we were like, right, that's it. We're not paying anything ever again. Which is kind of a mistake. Again, in their commercial rules, it's a good thing to stay in honor, which is a valuable lesson to anybody who's following, and people are doing it. We need to do it. I don't want to put anybody off. I'm just offering a little tale of caution.
Yes.
So that's one thing which will make a difference to your case as it progresses, and we don't know where it's going to progress. That's the thing. There isn't a single case. Everyone is different. And you have to deal with them all on their own merits. So if you can, and you're not doing an outright rebellious fight as we did, so if you're genuinely in trouble and you choose to fight the mortgage, for example, or if you just want to fight it, either keep the money aside, because that's all they want. That's all they want. Through threats and menaces, they just keep hacking at you. That's their only intention, and they will allow you to pay them their money back and reset everything right up until the very, very, very last minute. I know this because I have experience of it. Or just pay them a little bit off the interest. So if it does go to court, you can say that you stayed in honor in front of the judge, and that's important in these commercial transactions, staying in honor. Like I say, we had no intention of doing such things, which again is wrong. And if we were to make a claim in equity and trusts, you must come with clean hands. So it does have a negative effect, but I can imagine the sovereign freemen of the land fighters out of there, being on the side that we were on, shouting, "Don't pay him anything, blah, blah, blah. It's all got to stop." And I agree, it's all got to stop. So my first court appearance, and again, it's really weird when you stop paying everything. TV license was easy to get shot of, and we didn't watch TV anyway. Went overboard with that letter, and it was used as a template for many people in Cwmbran. Pointed out the fact that they've been harbouring paedophiles for many years, and so you only have to tell them, "I don't watch it, don't need a license." But we went overboard just for the fun of it.
Right.
You learn to write a damn good letter, put it that way.
Yes.
So it can be quiet for sometimes a month or two. You don't hear off, you owe all these people money, and they're all chasing for the money, and you don't hear anything for a month or two. And then all of a sudden, it'll be a Friday generally. You just get a letter off all of your creditors, all at the same time. And we believe it's to just keep that pressure on, keep you under pressure. And then you're dealing with all of these things at the same time as well. In hindsight, it would have been much easier to deal with one issue at a time.
Right.
There's another little lesson, pick your battles wisely. Um, so my first introduction to court was water rates. Hadn't paid them for a long time anyway. It falls from the sky, it should be free. The infrastructure is already there. It might be falling apart due to neglect, but the infrastructure we've had there for some time, more than a couple of years, put it that way. So all of that money, that should easily cover the infrastructure and actually maybe cleaning our water instead of giving it a chemical wash, which is poisonous to us all. It's one of the first things to change is your water, and I'm sure you've spouted that many times on your channel. But I think the main source of the poison comes through the water. So yeah, we were challenging council tax, water rates, blah blah blah. First court case was for the water rates. And I got them. I didn't use any particular Freeman arguments. The stuff which I had and the legislation. It was easy to win a case in a fair system.
Right.
I managed to get the judge to send the solicitor stroke barrister out of the courtroom to phone the water rates, to clarify some details and whatever else. Came back in, couldn't. I put up a really good argument. It was a winning case in my sort of confident view. But they adjourn. And this is a pattern that I've noticed in court as well. If you do, particularly in the county courts, it's not on record. They can say and do whatever they want. And I have experience of that also. If you do get them into a situation, I feel, let's just say it feels like more than a coincidence that every time you have the judges on the ropes where you force them into a position where really they should rule in your favor, they just adjourn. And we never saw the same judge twice, ever.
Oh, right. Fascinating.
Throughout all the count, the only time we've seen the same judge for the whole case, later on in the story, I took a private criminal prosecution out against the mortgage company and the broker. And we had the same judge in every case as opposed to a magistrate in that. But in the county courts, different judge every single time without fail. Never saw the same judge twice. So anyway, inevitably, we went back in for the court case for the water. Fausty judge, as soon as you walk in, you know what they're going to do. And it doesn't matter what I said. I was pointing out my facts. And Mr. Purcell, I don't believe that Welsh Water would do such a thing. That doesn't conform with how you should be running it. So he was practicing from the bench and making the decisions for them. And in the end, he shouted at me and said, look, this court is ruled on probability. So if I believe that 50.5% they are in the right, they win and you lose. Within short succession, we were in for the mortgage, which was the big one. Now, the mortgage, and on one hand, I can say we made mistakes. In hindsight, there are things which I could have, should have, and would like to have done differently. I don't regret the fact that we challenged anything and did what we did. I've got such a massive knowledge in my head, and on paper, in fact. And now I use that knowledge to, help and guide other people in the local area. I'm always busy writing stuff for people and so on, so on. I've done a bit with PCP Wales, Public Child Protection Wales, a little plug for them there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, you're
got any spare money, make your donation.
They do. I know you're acquainted, so there's a little plug for them. So I did use the Freeman argument for the court. I mixed it up with legislation. And again, this is one of my issues, right? So I sorry to sidetrack.
That's all right.
But I'll try and chuck them in as I go along, if that's okay. Tell me if I'm rambling.
No.
So a lot of the common law freemen of the land, a big argument of this is there is no contract. Show me the contract. There is no contract. I'm not obliged to adhere to your legislation. written rules of a
Right.
corporation. And again, I agree with all of this stuff. But then you can't go into a court with a piece of legislation as a defense. Surely not. Do you see what I mean? That's contradictory. If you're saying if you're not going to abide by their legislation, then don't abide by this legislation. You
Right.
can't pick and choose, in my opinion. Do you see
So
what I mean?
are you saying that if you're going in as using natural law or common law or freeman of the land, that thing, you stick to that. You can't then mix and match.
Well, again, if you're
As in,
blatantly expressing as a fact that you can't do X, Y, and Z to me because your legislation doesn't apply,
yeah.
then how can I use a piece as
How do you
defense
use a
because it
piece?
doesn't
Yeah.
apply?
Right.
That's a little bit contradictory. From my point of view, it's contradictory. Either it complies to you, either you're obligated to use it, or you're not.
Right.
In my
Okay.
opinion,
Yes.
and because of that, we've got the tools in the legislation. I believe. Everything I do now is using their own rules against them. So basically, we used the Freeman argument in court. It was a bit of a mix and match of what I had learned myself personally, and then there were some documents on the internet from some gurus. And again, when you're in these circles, you're like a magnet. You attract similar people. So there's a lot of information being shared. There's a lot of documents being shared, and you can learn a lot of stuff quite quick. So my defense when I was going in for the mortgage was some of my own work. A lot of it was work from other people on the internet, highly respected people in the Freeman movement. There was one in particular. He's dead now. I used a big portion of his work, but I still see people pushing it now. Use this, doesn't fail. Well, it failed us and all the other people we know. Anyway, so we used the old to my demise in my Freeman argument, my I'm a man argument. I did actually state in there that the courts, as the government, they're private corporations, as found on Dun and Bradstreet. Here's your number. You know better than McDonald's.
Yeah.
That statement haunted me throughout the whole. I went on for two. I held them off for 2 years with the mortgage.
Right. Oh, that's really interesting.
That statement haunted me. So I had the law and the truth on my side. I truly believe, right, with the securitization issue with the mortgages. And I'll if we have time, I'll run into this briefly, a bit deeper into how they defraud us with the mortgages. The securitization issue, I've actually got my address listed in the sales prospectus through the 395 transfer document held on Companies House. Now, their defense in court, I know this because they used it against me. Their defense in court is, I believe, I'm a bit rusty. I like to say I haven't touched this stuff for many years. I believe it's Sinclair versus Sinclair versus Accord Mortgages, I believe, is somewhere along there. It's only a land registry hearing, but in there they ruled that the mortgage companies are fine to securitize the mortgages because they only securitize the equitable interest off the top. Well, straight away, with my lack of experience, as soon as they use equitable interests, I should have switched to equity, but I didn't. So there's a mistake that I made that I became aware of later. So basically, the judge ruled that they're only securitizing the equitable interest and not the actual mortgage. Well, I've got all of the information. They're demonstrating 100% that they're selling the mortgage as well. And in fact, every letter, so your mortgage is owned by a management company once they sell it. Every letter that you receive regarding your mortgage, every phone call where they answer and say, hello, blah, 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 mortgage company, that's the management company pretending to be them.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
that in itself is fraud.
Yes.
They're pretending to be the mortgage company, but they're actually a management company. And all of this is documented in the sales prospectus. It's like 400 pages of detail.
Mm.
So anyway, we learned different things as we went along. We held them off for 2 years on the mortgages. In every single hearing, again, when I had the judge on the ropes, or
David
at
Jones.
least in my belief, I had them on the ropes. That sniveling little barrister on the side was, but sir, he said we were no better than McDonald's. And they said it in
Oh,
every single hearing, without, they said we know better than McDonald's. And I said, oh, shut up, man. Do you know what I mean?
yes. But they
Um,
weren't. They weren't denying that they weren't a corporation.
no, good God. And no, I put the evidence in there.
Yes.
This is what, in
So
the
they.
beginning,
So although they could say that, they still are no better. I mean, they have no more authority
no,
than a corporation like McDonald's or
exactly that.
any other corporation.
Exactly that, and the way I was treated, and the only things I can state as fact are my own experiences.
Yes, of course.
And I'll try and point out what's my own experience and what is hearsay. Um, but no, they didn't deny it, and I like to state things as fact. And I actually put their corporation number in the evidence and so on, so on.
Yeah. So they
Deny it with
couldn't deny it.
substance, but they never denied it. They didn't even try. It doesn't matter. But they are the court. I mean, the court again, is a fiction,
Mm.
a word which I'm sure you've heard throughout your journeys.
Yes.
It's a legal fiction. The court. It's a building. It's an inanimate object. It can't make rules or decisions. It's the people who are
Mm.
doing it. Um, they make the decisions basically. And again, so back to that, I had that in every single hearing. So the first hearing, I had said that I wasn't turning up because they know better than McDonald's. I expect to keep my property and all of my assets and blah, 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 and all the mortgages are fraud, and this is what they've done wrong, and so on, so on, so forth. And basically, I'm not coming. You have got no authority over me. Within a couple of days, you get the order through the door, summary judgment. And again, so all of the people on the internet who are stating just don't turn up in court, they make a summary judgment in your absence. It's the rules of the court. They come in anyway.
Mm.
Now, when I say they come in anyway, I'm sure again there's a lot of, and this is one of my issues. There are so many people giving information and expertise out on the internet who've never tried anything like it. And it's easy because there's a million and one YouTube videos and there's a million and one documents where I did this and this worked. You never see what actually happened after it. Just by saying I'm not going into court isn't a victory. So anyway, we received the order back then, summary judgment. They'd ruled in our absence. They were coming around it was, I believe that was November 2015. They were coming round in the December at some point, close to Christmas, got a little girl and so on, so on. So there's another mistake. So don't tell them they know better than McDonald's. And if you've got a summons for court, I really can't see any genuine way of not turning up and keeping your house. From my
Right.
point of view, that's just an outright loss. I stuck my thumbprint on a piece of paper. I claimed that I was the man. I was reasonably fluent. I say reasonably because I don't know for sure. Nobody does. I was reasonably fluent in the language. I was careful what I did and didn't use. And, I don't stand under you and so on, so on. But they were coming. So I had to beg and plead the courts then to allow me back in to appeal this decision. Based on the evidence which I had within the mortgage, I won't give any names,
No.
but a judge from the High Court, Queen's Counsel, I believe he allowed an appeal. Usually, in most instances, all the orders that I ever see, they might run on to 2 pages, the top of the second page or something. Most of them are just half a page. Mine was like 3 pages or 3 sides of A4. My Freeman argument was utterly dismissed, and the judge described it, amongst other words, as bizarre. That's how good it did me. So there was a summary judgment, and then the appeal. I was lucky to get back in, to be honest. It was described as bizarre. Anyway, got the appeal. We went through various court hearings. Again, every time I felt that I had them on the ropes, they would adjourn it to go and see another judge.
Yeah.
And like I say, we were in and out of court, and it's reasonably regularly. Very close to 2 years, between 1.5 years and 2 years, I would say we were in and out of court for the mortgage, just in the civil courts. This is in the county courts. So after being passed from pillar to post, I in some instances, I had the judges writing down the law that I was quoting them because they weren't aware. One of those, and I don't see it very often on the Freeman thing, when people are challenging their mortgages, it's a law, so I'll say it because it's quite an important law with regards to deeds, and it's the rule in Piggott's case, 1614. Now, the old laws are the best because they've stood the test of time. Don't let anybody mock and ridicule you because it's from 1614, like they did me. They're the best ones. They've stood the test of time, and they're still good law. So the rule in Piggott's case has been adjusted slightly over the years. No alteration. Any alteration to a deed without the consent of both parties renders the deed void. Like I say, it's been updated slightly, so it's now any material alteration made to a deed without the consent of both parties is void, because deeds were so strict, and to some degree still are, but in 1614, obviously, if you dropped your pencil on the deed and it just left a little pencil mark in the margin, that would void the deed. Hence why they added the word material. And I'm aware of this because I've read the case law, the consecutive case law from it. I like to know everything. If I'm going to state or use something, I like to have at least a good foundational understanding of it. So they added the word material. Now, with regards to the mortgage fraud, it's a big issue that they're not putting the date in. Mine was actually, I had actually Tipex on my date. My deed was altered and they created a new one. I've got 3 versions of mine. The one without the date in, which again is illegal. If we got time, I'll explain that. The second one had a particular date on there. That deed expired. Now, according to the law, they should have simply just contacted me and said, your deed has expired. Can you please write us a new one? Instead, they took to the Tipex and Tipexed it out and altered the deed. Now, a deed is a contract. Any other contract in law are classed as simple contracts compared to a deed. They're very, very strict. So you've got the rule in Piggott's case, which has stood since 1614. Section 2 of the Law of Property Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1989 explains now what a deed is. It was section 52 of the Law of Property. The Council of Mortgage Lenders will state, don't amend the deed. I believe it's in the MCOB rules, don't amend the deed. On the Land Registry website, don't amend the deed. Everywhere it says don't amend the deed, and they took Tipex to mine. So I was using all these laws against them. They're just not aware, and when they made aware, they ignore it anyway. So the last but one trip into the county courts, I won't name the name of the judge. He was the worst. So it was like walking into Batman's cave when you walked in that courtroom. He was horrible. And what you've got to realize as well, a lot of these are deputy district judges. So there's solicitors who are just acting as a judge just for that day. So they're buddies with all of these solicitors.
Yes, of course.
There's a conflict of interest there straight away. And just also as well, while I can slip it in there, I like the etymology, the formation, the foundation of words and stuff. Now, if you look up law and lawyer in etymology, both of them refer to lie. So law and lawyer come from the word lie, and soliciting still illegal in this country. So that's the basis of our law system.
Yes.
So anyway, I had this judge. He was absolutely foul. He acknowledged, and in fact, he elaborated on the adjustments to my deed. And I also had at this time the alternative copies. But he not only acknowledged, but he elaborated on the alterations on my deed. And then we rule in favor of the claimant. Now, by this point, it was an outburst. I went, "You what?" Because he had just acknowledged
Mm,
the
mm.
fraud on my deed. I could see where he was going halfway through the case, halfway through the hearing, and at one point, because I could see where we were going, I actually asked him, "Are we bound by case?" And it was my appeal. I'd appealed to get back in here. Sorry for jumping back. He just let them go first. Now, when it's your hearing, you go first.
Right.
That's the rules of the court. So there was breach one. He just invited them to start speaking. So they told the story, and once again, he said they were no better than McDonald's, sir. Chuck that in there, right? So there's breach number one. I asked him if we were bound by case law, which every court is. It's the rules of the court. Are we bound by case law? And his answer was only if I feel it's necessary. So that's him sacked,
Right.
right? That's him sacked. Basically, of course, you're bound by case law. That's the rules of the court. That's what gives our judicial system fairness.
Yes. You can't be on the whim of just an acting
Exactly that.
solicitor.
And he no, of course, and he wasn't acting. He was a deputy as well.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Um, and then at the end, there was an almighty, "You what?" I said, "You just blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Mr. Purcell, blah, 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 blah." And they do all this shouting and whatever else and threaten to have you for contempt and throw you out and so on, so on. And again, these are other things which I'm aware of. When you try the Freeman argument, they'll threaten you with contempt. And with contempt, they can get the police to come and get you. Do you know what I mean? I know people, or at least one person personally, who was held in the cells until he gave a psychiatric evaluation before they would allow him in for his hearing because he was spouting the "I'm a man" stuff. So anyway, I lost. That was the loss there, and
And you lost your house.
eventually, yes, we'll get there. So I appealed this judge, or I appealed his decision to the High Court. So to appeal to the High Court, you have to have a transcript of the case. Now, in the transcript, you've got me shouting, "You what?" because he had just ruled that he had elaborated on the fraud on the deed. He had stated that case law he only binds him if he decides it's necessary. And there was a third issue as well, which was vitally important. It just showed how dirty and devious this particular judge was. So you apply for the I applied for the transcript. It was part of the conditions of them allowing me the appeal. Well, first of all, it went way past my court date because they couldn't find the tape, and they still use tapes. They couldn't find the tape for my hearing. I had to again beg and plead for an adjournment, which was, I say beg and plead. The problem was with the transcript company, so it wasn't an issue. But you're only allowed to use a list of their transcribers. You get so many words free, and then they charge you by the word. And I love to talk. They were expensive. Their transcripts were 500 quid plus for a
Blimey.
transcript. They sent me the wrong one. I sent it back. It was just delayed and delayed and delayed. When I finally got the transcript, they had removed the relevant sections. They were important bits where I was talking, and coincidentally, it was mainly where I was speaking, inaudible, 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 all the way through it.
Very convenient.
Very convenient. The incriminating parts that judge had said were missing. And they hadn't even fluffed it over. They had just taken them out and pretended they hadn't touched it.
Right.
It didn't even make proper sense grammatically, assuming that's a real word, grammatically. It didn't. It wasn't proper English anymore. But the judge, the ruling judge, has the opportunity to read through the transcript and decide which bits go to the person who's paying for it anyway. So
Oh
again,
my God!
yeah,
How
it's
corrupt!
disgusting. Well, yeah, it's
Yes,
disgusting. In all fairness,
yes.
they've got us by the short and curlies.
Mm.
Um, and again, I'm not criticizing the law, so to speak. It's the people who are running the law is the issue.
They don't want you to win
They don't
because,
want, no, they
yeah.
do anything but. And I have more evidence of that coming up as well. So we got the appeal. We went back into the county court. Again, a load of mumbo jumbo. You present your documentation. It is stated as fact. They don't give anything, mind. They really don't give any evidence to the contrary. They just go in and they speak their fluff and win.
Mm.
The last hearing, the appeal from this one, he was a nice judge, but again, he's probably one of the ones who were better at his job because he seemed nice, but still ruled against me. And I took a load of witnesses to that one with me as well. We had a good few people in the courtroom. Um,
How long are these sessions in court?
well, they allow you 30 minutes generally. Mine were, I would say, looking, my memory would tell me 30 minutes, but yeah, I dragged my on. There's a lot to say.
Yeah, of course.
Do you know what I mean? And I do get sidetracked somewhat from time to time. I don't know if you noticed.
Well,
So
that's
yeah,
okay. I didn't realise there was an actual time limit. I thought that that the law would progress until the right
I'm not
outcome,
saying no. I'm not saying there's a time limit,
but
but
they
the
like to.
courts, when they allow you a hearing, they will allocate a certain amount of time on the
Right.
application form. They will say, "How long do you want for this hearing?"
Right.
And I would always put an inexperienced time in there. I didn't know how long it was going to last.
Yeah.
I'm no legal professional.
2 days, please.
Yeah, so I put a time in there, hour and a half or whatever. They always
Yeah.
seem to memory to allocate about 30 minutes.
Right.
And it's not that they just stop it at 30 minutes. They go on. They do rush you along, but, I tended to keep them in there for at least an hour.
Good for you.
So anyway, we had this hearing, and by this time, we had more evidence, and which you have to beg and ask to be able to be included and write new bits of paper to the court and pay to have them admitted, and it's an expensive hobby going to court. So inevitably we lost again. So again,
Were you at this point thinking, what's the point? Are we on a losing wicket?
yeah, without a doubt. But by this time, we were way too deep in. We had no choice. Once you get so far, we had no choice.
Right.
We had to continue. We had to continue.
Can't pull out of it. Yeah.
We didn't have the money, so they keep racking up the interest rates. And like I said at the beginning, if you keep the money aside, you can always pay that off, and it'll just go back to zero.
Yeah.
We got to the stage where, just as a settlement to allow us to reset it to zero, they were requesting like 14 grand, something like that at one point, and that was still reasonably early on. It's compound interest; it just keeps mounting and mounting. So there was no get out for us by that time. We had to challenge, and again, I learned a lot more from carrying on challenge. As much as some bad stuff happened.
Yes.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I've no longer got a room full of stuff. They took that off us. We'll get there too. They were evil. They made an example of us in the end. So we lost that one. Again, I put another appeal in, and we had, I can't remember the technical name for it, but we went to Cardiff to the High Court, and you have like quarter of an hour in front of a judge to try and convince him to give you an appeal.
How many times can you appeal a case?
If there's an issue with it, I assume it's indefinitely.
Right.
So we had many issues with ours, and we were appealing on these issues.
So you'd have to have some.
Oh
claim.
You have to have.
You can't just go. I'm unhappy with the verdict. I'd like to appeal.
No. If you're unhappy with it, it's so what. But we had issues. I mean, we were pointing out errors with the judges and so on and so on. We were finding, so this piece of evidence that I had in there wasn't taken into account. Blah 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 blah. So they let you back in so a judge can have a look at that bit of evidence. And we were finding lots more stuff along the way. I mean, it's a rabbit hole that I've been down very, 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 very deep. And if I jumped down there today, I could still fill years of my life with learning. It's deep. So anyway, I had to go to Cardiff. You have like quarter of an hour with this judge to try and convince him. He said, oh no, before that, yeah, no. So a judge that we had, so we had a judge for another hearing, put an appeal in, and the appeal went to the same judge that said no.
Oh,
That made us lose our case. So he was deciding whether to appeal his own case.
yeah. Probably
Um,
wasn't going to.
no, you'll never get permission to appeal because that's like the judge admitting that they were wrong.
Yeah.
So anyway, by the end of this, we were done and dusted with the county courts and even the High Court in Cardiff. We didn't actually get a hearing in the High Court. My final effort, they threatened me with a 99-year civil restraining order. I wouldn't have been able to go into court until I was like 140 something.
God.
I know they didn't want me in there. That's most certain. They didn't want me in there. And, there's probably people screaming that there's no case there and whatever. They kept letting me back. There was obviously errors with the law because I was in and out for 2 years. You don't get in for anything.
No.
So,
meanwhile, your interest is accruing all this time, presumably
of
on
course,
the debt.
yeah.
And you've got court fees to pay.
And court, well, generally applications and things. Yeah, I mean the court fees go on top then at the end. The court fees, applications you pay for the application. Any court fees, solicitors' fees. They never hounded me. I think they work on the assumption that when they finally take the house, and they're certain that they will, when they finally take the house and sell it, they will get all their court fees and stuff back from the sale of the house. So we'd finally finished in the county courts. I moved on then to the criminal courts. And through all of this, just to slip in quickly, through all of this, a lot of people shouting, not shouting, but, sending messages, blah, 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 equity courts, where your remedy is and so on, so on. But I had very little experience. I had to do a deep dive and learn legislation and stuff. And it takes over your life. I lost a couple of years of my life just researching and battling in court. It doesn't leave you much time to do anything else. So I moved over to the criminal court. The judge kept testing me. That's how I put it. So some of my charges were vicarious liability against the CEO of the mortgage company, etc. So, he sent me away. I wanted to explain to me how you can be vicariously liable in criminal court. I want you to write me this by X date and blah, blah. And all the little tests he sent me away for, I obviously passed. We went in for another hearing, and this went on for a couple of months. We went in for one hearing. I laid an information. I had 30 charges on there, spread over 4 people. The CEO, the mortgage broker, 2 others, somebody who worked in the mortgage company just spouting lies, and somebody else from the brokers. I had 30 charges. He said, Mr. Purcell, he said, I don't like going equipped. I said, can I redact it? He said, yes, of course you can. I said, I redact it then. He said, right, issue the summons. So I had a summons issued for 29 charges against the CEO of the mortgage company and one other, the CEO of the mortgage broker and the mortgage broker. They were or pretty much all of them were fraud from the Fraud Act, Counterfeiting Act. So between 7 and 14 years. Various hearings and various adjournments and so on. On the actual date that they were due to come and give their plea, so they had to sit in the court and, plead guilty, innocent or guilty, we walked into that room and it was just ram-packed. It was full. Now, other than the usuals, every single hearing I'd had in the criminal court, I was in there on my own, other than, the person on the little keyboard thing, the clerk,
Mm.
the judge, a couple of ushers
Just
back and
the
forth,
main stuff.
so on and so forth. And in all honesty, the judge and the clerk in particular in that courtroom were outstanding. I believe fundamentally they were good people, particularly the clerk. And when you think about it, they're probably day in, day out, they're having crappy TV license cases.
Yeah.
17-year-old Joe Bloggs kicked his missus in the head on the weekend drunk, and council tax, and all the mundane stuff. And then here comes in this Jack the Lad with 29 fraud bloody cases against the CEO of a mortgage company. I think it may have sparked a bit of interest in him,
Mm.
a bit of
Mm.
jolly for the day. Anyway, on that final day, the room was ram-packed just with black suits. I would say that every single chair was full. I didn't even get to sit in my usual sitting space. I was in like the gallery, on the front seat of the gallery. It was like, I'll sit by there. Um, the whole demeanor of the judge and the clerk was different. And basically, the CPS had intervened and dropped the case. Now, I was fully aware that there is case law from a more senior court. There's case law and other bits and bobs where they're not fully in their rights to drop the case. It's private, it's mine. Do you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless the judge decides to drop it for one of the rules of the court, it's not in the public interest, or is vexatious, or there's no merit, then you can put up this fight that the CPS can't drop your case. It's my private case. And I put this to the judge, and I'm in no doubt whatsoever, and the people who were in that courtroom with me are in no doubt that he'd been leaned on.
Mm.
The clerk, who was always outstanding, she was always full of smiles. When he first said issue the summons, she couldn't get to that phone quick enough to pick it up and phone downstairs for the summons to be typed up. She was truly and utterly on my side. I'm 100% aware of that. On this day, when she had to speak to the judge, she spun her chair around the opposite way so she didn't have to make eye contact with me. She was red in the face, the smiles that she knew, basically. I think she knew. So that was the criminal case over with. I did mount one more final criminal case. We learned a lot more about the securitization on the mortgage, and the offence, which is section 123 of the Land Registration Act. I believe it's the only offence in there, to be honest, where if you transfer any interest in land, it has to be re-registered within X amount of time on the land registry, or intentionally not doing so is an offence. Well, when they securitize the mortgage, they intentionally don't register it on the land registry. It stays in the name of the original mortgage company. By this time, I think I had used up all my cards, and the judge, I think he knew what was going to happen and wasn't going to waste any more time. And, it's just not in the public interest, Mr. Purcell. We're not allowing it to go forward, blah, blah, blah. The mortgage company, or at least the bailiff, the one bailiff who kept coming round. First time he came round, and a few people on the door. First time he came round to repossess us, we helped repossess. They never possessed it. Look, to do again. Again, it's the words. And he had obviously signed, or he had his name, never signed. He had his name on the court documentation. And when I asked him for his ID, and I looked at his ID, there was no name or no number on it. It was a photo of him, but that could have easily been a door swipe card, or his clocking in card. I don't know. So he told me his name, and I said, "Oh, you're so and so." Like I mentioned no names. I said, "Right, you're so and so, are you?" So then, I was looking deeper, and everybody else's ID has got a name and a number on the front. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, when he came round the next time, I said, "Can I see your ID?" So he got his ID out. And he's like, "Yeah, there it is." He turned it over. You know your little Dymo machines where you print out letters on a bit
Oh,
of
yeah.
plastics. His name was stuck on the back of the card on one of them. Right. So I don't know who that man was. He worked in the court. I've seen him in there. Right. He was being sent by the court, but I don't know if that is the man. And we even went a little bit further. So we were trying to find out information who he is. He wasn't registered on the board in Newport. On their notice board inside, it lists the names of the bailiffs who were on duty in that court, and his name wasn't on there. So we done. I can't remember if we wrote to them, phoned them up, or done a freedom of information request. I can't remember. But it turns out that he was apparently just helping out in Newport County Court from Merthyr Court because they were busy. So he's not registered in Newport. He should be registered at Merthyr. We got in touch with Merthyr. They wrote back, and the two bailiffs at Merthyr were not him. So I still to this day do not know who this bloke was. I don't even know if he was a genuine bailiff or not. I don't know if he was using somebody else's name. I mean, he was from the court. I'm not disputing that he was from the court. Whether or not he was an official bailiff, I do not know of the court. So anyway, they turned round. They turned up then sometime later. Fake locksmiths. It's never a reputable locksmith company. The vans are not. They just turn up in a plain old van. Now, according to the law, they're only supposed to pick the locks. That's the only authority they have to repossess. They didn't even try to pick the locks. They came with a crowbar, a sledgehammer, and an angle grinder.
Good God.
They were making an example of us. The video of us, a friend of ours came down in the panic, started videoing. The video of the eviction is probably still out there somewhere. That had like 2 million views in I don't know, in like 2 days, something like that. It went mental. And I'd actually barricaded the door up relatively well. I made them work for their money. They were swapping people with a sledgehammer. They couldn't get through the door. There were even people from the gypsy community saying, bloody hell, what did he do to that door? I want him to come around and do something for us. I held him out for a good while. And there was loads of them. Like I say, they basically cut us out of that house. They made an example of us. The police are we phoned the police when the bailiffs turned up, mind. We actually phoned the police because it's a breach of the peace. And again, for people who don't know, a breach of the peace isn't making a lot of noise outside. The current case law, the last time I looked, I think is R versus Howell, 1984, something like that. And a breach of the peace is defined in law as a threat to person or person's property while person is present. Right. Something like that is a breach of the peace. Well, they're the ones who were threatening and cutting us out with an angle grinder, a sledgehammer, and a crowbar. Even the dog was that was a horrific day. That was that rates as one of the worst days of my life. That was proper. I don't know. I can't even think of the words of how to describe it. But at one point, the dog was barking. We had a Doberman there, and he wasn't being threatening. He was barking. There was people smashing in through the door.
Of course.
They phoned the dog handlers. They were going to take the dog away. So, and at one point, they needed to smash the second panel of glass out of the door, and I was leaning on the door by this time. My barricade was slightly weakening. The locksmith with the sledgehammer, he asked me to move out of the way. I said no, and he actually smashed that glass with me leaning on it with a sledgehammer.
Crikey.
So somebody it turned out it was somebody who we knew from Cwmbran. He works with the health and safety executive, and he took it on his own back basically to send all this information to them. I mean, that was a major breach of health and safety. just smashing glass around in a
Yeah.
public place with, police and bailiffs and whoever else around, and me leaning on the glass on the other side. Again, they refused. So basically, they got us out. They wanted to take the dog, um, locked us all out. And again, then they put a notice on, you have to contact the estate agents within X amount of days to retrieve your goods. They Again, it's illegal. I can't think of the actual time limit. I would state that it's no longer than a month. They kept our stuff in. They didn't give us access to the house for like 7 or 8 months.
Bloody hell.
Now they take all the windows out so they can put the shutters on. So basically, it's an open house. They kept our stuff for about 7 or 8 months. It just festered. It festered. All our business stuff was in there. We were self-employed. We worked from home. Did personalized printing. I mean, in that time, all the printers were blocked up. Everything had gone rusty. The stock was all the soft furnishing stock that we used to print on that had just gone moldy. The phone cases and things like that, they were all out of date by this time. Do you know what I mean? So we lost the house and the business. I literally walked out of that house in the clothes I was wearing. We managed to we got the computer out, which had all my information on there and, my bundles of documents. Because the fight continued for a little while afterwards to no avail. And we got a shed load of stuff for the little one. She didn't go without. We done all right there, but both myself and Catherine, we came out of that house literally in the clothes that we were wearing. I had clothes donated to me originally when we first came out because everything I owned was in that house. No means of money. And in all fairness, like I say, the in-laws put us up, which I'm very grateful for. And the fight continues, so to speak. But as I think that was a worst case scenario. To some degree, we alienated the courts, and I'm not suggesting that it would ever get that bad with most people. But you'd like to see a Tom Crawford and stuff like, it got pretty bad with those. And there was another girl at the same time. She was a teacher. We came across people who had never actually had a mortgage. A mortgage company made one up for them, and they came and took their house. So it can get quite bad. Are we doing on time?
Well, coming pretty much an hour, I think now. Hang on, I'm just going to have a look at the time. Yeah, just over an hour by 7 minutes.
Right, okay. Do you need to stop?
Ish, unless you...
Well, no, because, if we had more time, I could have ran into the mortgage fraud and maybe some other details, but I'm fully aware that your shows are roughly around an hour, and I think, I've got to a certain point. What I would like to end it with, and I think the point of my story and the lessons my experience has taught me, there is lots of good information. Some of your guests have got some brilliant information. Mark Horn, in particular, was outstanding. He was brilliant. Gavin, Sovereign Empowerment, they all give their little bit. Do you know what I mean? They've all given their little bit, but those two in particular, of the guests of yours that I've watched, have been outstanding. And Stan McDonald. Now, I think the lesson here, where I'm saying outstanding, they're using their rules to fight them, which is what I do now. And I have lots of success for other people. I have lots of success using their rules to fight them.
Because they can't dispute that if you're able to say, look, here's the legislation here.
They can and they do dispute it, but they do their ignoramuses. They really are.
Yeah.
And it's the lower level brown shirts who are the worst.
Right.
Your council level workers who believe they're God.
Yes.
They're the worst because they've never looked at anything. They're just spouting the government's propaganda for them with no knowledge and no education. They're the worst, but they're the people who need educating first.
Gosh.
So I think my final point would be there's no guru out there who's got the magic pill. If we had the magic pill, we would all be free. We would
Yes.
all be free if that magic pill existed. Um, Keep the fight up, definitely, without a doubt. I believe humanity at the moment is acting like a quantum computer. There's so many of us awake, and many, many more since the event that recently
Yeah.
happened. We're acting like a quantum computer. We're all looking at everything all at the same time and deciphering the best bits. We're getting close. We are getting close. I truly believe that. Um, Stay away from websites, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to come on. There's at least one website out there I've seen, closed groups guaranteeing 100% success. That's a myth. That's a myth. There is no 100% guaranteed success. And it turns out this one particular site, they're charging 175 quid for a subject access request. I knock them up for people in 5 minutes, and there's plenty of templates on the internet of people who will give them to you for free.
Yeah.
If you're a real truther, and if you're really looking for sovereignty and freedom and whatever else, they're not going to charge for it.
No.
Right? This is the community that we're all supposedly striving for. It's
Yeah.
not for money, it's for freedom. And I'm aware that it's a numbers game. So I need to help people to boost them numbers so I can be free. So
Yeah.
don't pay for anything on the internet. That's my biggest warning. They're just ripping you off. They haven't got the answers. It's as simple as that. And I don't believe I'll probably upset some people. I don't believe that stating you're a man and sticking your thumbprint on a piece of paper is going to win you anything in court. We had other court cases as well, not just them, and it didn't work in any of them, nor did it work for any of our friends. But
Well,
we're winning. We are
yes.
winning. I can sound like a negative Nelly, but that's the truth and the facts of my life.
Yes. But from all of that, you've learned a hell of
Yeah,
a lot, which now, as you say, you are actually helping
yeah.
people.
No, we do, and
And you've done it.
I've
That's
done
the
it.
thing.
Yeah. I've done it, and there are lots of other people who've done it as well. I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush, but
No, no.
just be careful who you trust.
Yes.
Learn to do a little bit of research yourself and verify what you're reading, because all the information they're pushing on you, they got for free off the internet. It's all out there.
Yeah.
So just be careful. That's my message. Just be careful. I don't want anyone going through what I went through. It isn't
No.
pleasant. It isn't pleasant.
No, it didn't sound pleasant at all. I think people will be, they would have taken on board, I think, the warnings that you've so rightly given.
And like I say, don't stop. Just learn their rules.
Yes.
They in a lot of legislation, there will actually be a section of defences. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The tools are there. We need to crack the legal system. That's what's corrupt.
Yes.
We need to crack that, and it's a numbers game. It is a numbers game.
Well, Darren, it has been very enlightening, and I think it's very important to not just put the positive side and say, oh, it's very easy. You just declare this, you do this and do that, and you win.
Yeah, I hope I've helped one person. If I've helped one person from going through what we went through, then that's a bonus. And like I say, that's not to say don't fight it. Please do. Please do. We need you. So yeah, I'll shut up and I'll let you kick me off now, because I've overstayed my welcome somewhat.
Not at all.
I think.
Not at all. I think it's been very enlightening and it's very necessary. And it's not always easy to get the other side to come on a show like this when you're trying to enlighten people, but at the same time you need balance.
Yeah, but I'm not the other side. I believe in
No,
all
I
that
don't
stuff.
mean. I guess I don't mean that.
Yeah.
I mean the other side of when things go wrong, even though you're using all the wisdom that is in a right world correct.
I agree totally, 100%. And we're fighting a corrupt system who've got the force,
who do not play by the they don't play fairly.
That's exactly it. That's the most
even though they make their own rules.
Exactly. But there are rules out there, and them rules are to be used. We just need to use them, basically. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for everyone who's listening, and upset anyone.
Just to close off, I mean, that's obviously happened. You're not now still in your in-laws. You've sort of
we are
recovered
still in the we are still in the in-laws. Yeah, and again, that's another story. But yeah, we are still in the in-laws. I mean, basically, we lost the house, a business, and a Jaguar. I'm a lot less materialistic now. Um, my dream is to build a straw bale house. So I'm just acquiring the mean, or aiming or trying to acquire the means to get myself a little plot. I don't want a lot. I don't need acreage, and I
Mm.
want to build myself a straw bale house somewhere where I haven't got neighbours.
Yeah.
That's the dream. That's where I'm trying to get to. Sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the main reasons we're still in the in-laws' house. Bless their cotton socks for putting up with us.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
your story and
Yeah.
just giving people that's a little bit of a warning,
Yeah,
really,
of
just to
course.
be careful,
Just be
but
careful.
to keep fighting. It's
Definitely.
been a joy to talk to you. I hope we talk again,
Well, I'd
and
love to. Like I say, there's a whole host of
there's
crap
more
running
stuff.
around up in there. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Well, I'm sure people will demand from me that we get you back on,
Maybe.
as are the audience. So, in the meantime, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to my audience, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to put your comments below. Be interesting to have your thoughts on all of this. And in the meantime, I shall be back again with more monologues and interviews in the future. Until then, from Darren and I, goodbye.
Brilliant. Thank you.